Why, hello there. Today, as I'm recording this, we are in the office. I finally moved upstairs and I am not using a green screen, so that's kind of exciting. We're gonna do my December wrap up while the weather outside is oh so frightful today. For the month of December, I read 10 books, so it was a pretty decent reading month overall. When I do these, I like to do the indie books first. So we're going to do the indie books first, then nonfiction, and then the rest in the order of being read. I like to give the indies some love first, just cause. So the first one is The Bonnie Swans by P.L. Watts. This book is coming out this month, and it's a story that was based off of this song by Lorena McKennitt called The Bonnie Swans about these sisters. And I don't want to go into what the song's about because it would be kind of a super spoiler for the book. But if you so feel inclined to look it up, please by all means look up the song, listen to it, and that's like where the basis of this book came from. It starts out, there's this woman, she arrives in France at this dock, her hands all messed up, and she doesn't remember how it got that way. She meets this man and lets herself be called Marguerite and takes on this whole new persona, and then she goes to live in this big manor that has seedy happenings and weirdness underlying, and she becomes a governess for the daughter of this rich merchant. As she slowly starts to remember like her life before and what happened to her, it was a really great dark fantasy book and comes out soon, so definitely check it out. It is put out by Cemetery Gates Media. It's part of the My Dark Library series I've raved about before. Like everything I've read for the My Dark Library series is awesome. And next, from Spooky House Press, I read The White Horse, which is fantasy or historical dark fantasy. It's a story that features the archetype of a white lady, and there's a lot of folklore intertwined. There's this woman who, when her father dies, she was the daughter of another woman, so her stepmom has always kind of just hated her. And so when her father passes away, when she turns 18, she gets the boot and gets kicked out of her house. And she goes to live at this great manor and becomes a governess to a little girl who's kind of, I guess, looks like a weasel and is kind of a butt. She goes to live there, and across the way is this horse on a hill, this white horse. It's like this big old outline. It's been there forever and ever, as long as anyone can remember, and there's a lot of like mythos around it and stories and this talk of a white lady and this beast that is connected to this white horse. And when she was younger, her and her half-sister had gone to like this carnival type event. It was by the white horse, and they went up to the white horse to sit by it, and she had stood on the eye of the horse and had a really weird experience where she kind of like all of a sudden was seeing what seemed like a different land or realm. She's also, the main protagonist is very musical, so everything she sees in music and song and like cadence and rhythm, and it's so just captivating and wonderful, and I really enjoyed it. This one is also out soon as well. So that was what I read for the indies. And then for nonfiction, I read a book called We Are the Ark by Mary Reynolds, and this is a nonfiction book about rewilding your yard and making a space for nature, getting rid of non-native invasive plants and bringing back more native plants to your area, and where you can look that up and different resources of how to find that. And even just the tiniest thing can make a difference, from like a window box. If you live in an apartment, you could do like a window box, to doing much bigger swaths of land. And it was pretty cool, and I want to try and dedicate a piece of the yard to do that, which I think would be pretty cool. The next thing I read was The Passenger by Cormac McCarthy. What a ride of a book. If you've never read Cormac McCarthy, it's definitely an experience. The premise of the book is there's this plane that crashes. The main character, he is a salvage diver, so him and his buddy, they go down there, and stuff's kind of weird, like some of the instrumentation's missing and the pilot's bag is missing, and then comes to find out later one of the passengers is missing. But then there's also all these weird elements of the story that don't make any sense in the beginning, and they slowly come into focus as you get further into the book. But at first I was like, what the F is happening? What is happening? I don't understand. But it comes clear. And there's also a second book that's out right now called Stella Maris. Actually, it just came in at the library and I need to go pick it up soon, but it's gonna be a few days before I go do that, so I'm excited to see where the rest of that story goes. It's weird because he doesn't use punctuation all the time. Like when there's a conversation, you don't know necessarily who's talking. And at first that bothered me, but eventually, like, it didn't matter because what was more important was the subject matter of what was being talked about in the conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a pretty great book. And then I read the rosiest, nosiest, coziest book. And before I said I didn't think it was the nosiest, but it is because of all the smells. All the smells from the coffee shop with the Cinnabons and the pastries and all the lovely stuff that happens. So Legends and Lattes is a fantasy book about what happens when you're this big tough warrior orc and you decide you're done with this murderous lifestyle. You're gonna set down roots and open up a coffee shop. It was such a cozy and wonderful read, and it was so cool because, you know, usually you don't get to see the other side. It's always about the adventure, and this was about what happens after the adventure. Like doing something else, settling down, and the people you meet along the way. And just, the characters are lovely, and it was such a good read. I loved it so much. And then I read Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. That book was really touching. It's fiction, but it's also kind of horror, but I felt like it was horror for people who aren't super into horror. There's some scary elements, but nothing that's like really terrifying. There's some creepy stuff, but not too much. But it's like the clockwork of a relationship and seeing how they met and just moments in time throughout the relationship with Miri and Leah, how it was before Leah went away and she went on one of her deep sea expeditions for her job, and when she came back she just wasn't the same. Something's wrong with her. She has all these like weird habits she's picked up and just kind of like going through the motions. It's strange and sad and sweet, and it was really good. And then I read A Book of Days by Patti Smith. In this book, it's all a bunch of her photographs for 365 days of the year with phrases underneath. It was kind of cool seeing all these pictures from different times and like snapshots of like her life, what interesting experiences she's had, the people she's met along the way, and her musical career. It evokes emotion too, seeing some of these photos. It's a very beautiful experience. And then I have finally entered the world of Darcy Coates. Was at the library. I saw Gallows Hill, which is one of her newest, and I picked it up and I absolutely loved it. So Darcy Coates, she's an Australian author and she is known for writing haunted house books. This one was about a haunted winery. I guess the property winery and everything, and then the Gallows Hill was all pretty much haunted, and it was so freaking good. I loved it. When I went to return it back to the librarian there was so excited that I read Darcy Coates, and so we talked about that for a little bit, and you know, I didn't think anything of it. And then the next time I went back, she's like, "You were the one who read the Darcy Coates book," and I was like, "Yes." And I was like, "Do you have a favorite one?" And she said The Hunt. And she's like, "It's not about a haunted house," even though most of hers are. And she said when she read it, she was kind of like, "Oh, I want a haunted house." But she said it's her absolute favorite one. So now I'm going to read The Hunt. This is how I find my books. Randomly. Librarians. You guys on the internet. Stuff I see on social media. I don't know. And then I read The Atrocities by Jeremy C. Shipp. And this book is about this governess that goes to this property of these really rich people. And these really rich people have all these creepy, grotesque statues in this hedge maze that you have to like get through to get to the house. And what they didn't tell the governess is that apparently the little girl is no longer with us and has passed on, but that I guess the ghost is still there and there might be someone for her to teach after all. And it's really weird and whimsical and strange, and there's a capybara in it named Princess, and I love capybaras. They just seem so chill, and they seem like they love every animal ever. You always see pictures of them. It's like they're chilling with ducks, cats, dogs, hanging out with alligators. Who doesn't like the capybara? I don't know. They're awesome. And then I read Jackal by Erin E. Adams. Fan-flippantastic. The main character's name is Liz Roche, and she returns back to her hometown in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And the only reason she goes back is her best friend is getting married. She doesn't want to go back there. There's bad history attached to there, and there's also this bad history of all these little black girls that went missing over the years. It's like 30-year span. The town kind of seems like it buried all the cases and refused to see that there was a link between any of these missing girl cases. So she goes to the wedding of Mel, her friend, and Mel is white and Mel's husband is black, and their daughter ends up going missing on the night of the wedding. All that's found is like a bloody piece of her dress. So this like sparks off you know, a whole nother investigation of trying to find her. Everybody's freaking out. Liz starts to tie all the loose strings together, like figuring out like how all these cases were intertwined over the years and who's behind it. And it's a mystery, I guess, so wrong on who's actually doing it. And I love that. I love that I was super wrong about who was behind it, because that means she wrote it so good. Other people you probably guessed, but I didn't. You know, it also shows like the systemic racism about how like when little black girls go missing, they don't get the extent of, you know, push for the police behind to come find or search and rescue or bringing out the dogs, and like they just delay everything. And it's freaking sad that that's still a thing, and that's how stuff is today. But it takes a look at that, and it was just fantastically written. The writing was so addictive, I couldn't put it down. And I look forward to see what else Aaron Adams will do, because awesome book. If you are a fan of videos where I talk about multiple books that I have read, the next video coming up will be another one about multiple books that I have read. So stick around, check it out. And if you had fun hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.